evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 13th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Could we do a roll call, please?
Member Soldwich?
Present.
Ritchie? Here. Ferris?
Here.
Ormsby?
Here.
Rabe?
Here.
Mormon? Here. And Stecker?
Here.
Item 3 is agenda approval. Would someone like to approve the December 2022 Planning and Zoning agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, number 4 is minutes approval. Approval of November's meeting minutes.
A motion to approve November's meeting minutes?
We have a second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Great. Number 5 on the agenda is public comment. This would be for anything that is not on the agenda. Is there anyone present for an item that is not on the agenda? Right. There is no old business. So number 7 is new business. Item A is consider recommendation on the comprehensive plan amendment for the 6th Street sub-area plan.
And I'm gonna hand it off to Sean O'Shea here, but really quick, just wanna quickly summarize what this is. And you might recall back in July of this year, Sean did give you a presentation kind of on a summary of the tasks that they were going to be doing when looking at this area. Well, here we are 6 months later. We're ready to consider a recommendation on this. So again, the 6th Street sub-area plan really started because Warren County is moving their secondary roads facility out of this area, and we kind of wanted to take a look at that area, which is about 6.4 acres, combined with our Public Works and Parks facility that's adjacent there, that's about 1.5 acres, to really get a good understanding of what the future land use of that area should be, what it could be, and MSA has done a really good job of putting some stuff together, but I'm gonna hand it off to Sean and kind of let him present the plan that is proposed, and we can have any questions after that.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thanks for your time. I know that you got a big agenda, so I'm going to try to get through this pretty quickly and then save some time for questions at the end if you have any. So, project timeline, review draft plan, draft concepts, facility needs assessment. So that was part of this, and that was from Martin Gardner Architecture. Kyle Martin did that piece of it, and we'll go over that a little bit too. And that's for the city facilities that are in that area. And then go over just briefly the action plan. I'm not going to go through each thing, and then, like I said, open it up for questions and comments. So like Charlie said, we're at the tail end of this. Really, we're presenting in front of you all, and then after the Christmas break, we'll be in front of council then for adoption based on any comments that you guys have tonight for the plan. So just a little bit of a rundown of what the plan will entail. Chapter 1's the introduction, kind of explains just basically what Charlie did there. Number 2 will be relevant studies and plans, so anything that the city's done in the past that was relevant that we tried to bring into this process as well. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, so comprehensive plan and all those types of plans are in there. Existing conditions analysis, so a snapshot of what the area is today and the surrounding area. Public engagement, so the public engagement piece that we had in, as well as in there, so the comments that we heard and who we spoke with. Economic development and housing, market review, so we were able to take a snapshot in time of that as well. So we looked at retail market analysis, housing analysis, just to figure out, what are some possibly good things that could go into this area. Good types of businesses, good types of housing that are needed throughout the community. This might be an area for that in the future. Public Works needs assessment analysis is that chapter 6 that I said, and then planning and implementation processes at the end. And that gives you that action plan at the end. And we've tried to have that in kind of some steps that the city can take that are broken down to help get from where we are today to where this vision might be in 10 or 20 years from now. So at the end, we came up with 2 concepts. I think at the beginning, we were planning on maybe coming up with 1 concept, but we ended up with 2. And really the difference between those 2 is if the co-op structure and the co-op itself ends up staying there, what does the area around it look like in the future? And if the co-op was to not be there and that structure was not to be there, then obviously it's a different look and feel with a change like that. So how that's pertinent to you all, land use. So really the land use is to look at this area in two different concepts. One's blue sky, and that's really that is kind of a blank slate. So if the co-op wasn't to be there and the structure wasn't to be there, what could that potentially look like? And it's really a mix of commercial, neighborhood commercial, residential, and really just trying to play nicely what do I want to say? You've got a really nice, well-established neighborhood here on the southeast end, and then you've got some really good developed commercial that runs along Jefferson. So, we want something in the middle of that that's going to interact the trail. So probably bicycle-oriented commercial, bicycle-oriented residential, those kinds of things. But then also really blend in with the existing neighborhood that's there as well, because it's a really nice, well-established neighborhood. So we talked with the residents there, we've talked with a lot of business owners in the area, and we talked with the co-op them as well. And then the towers concept is really, okay, if that stays there, then this kind of has a little bit of an industrial feel or industrial edge, but you still can do a lot of really neat things with it. So in the plan, we've got some pictures and some images of what that could look like. If the co-op was to not be there functioning, but the structure was to stay, maybe you can repurpose that structure and make that into apartment living or those kinds of things. There's other cities and other examples of that across the United States, and we put a few examples in the plan of that. So, playing on those elements, then maybe you got a little bit of an industrial feel to it, some industrial art installations, those kinds of things. So depending on what's on the ground in the future in the next 20 years or maybe beyond, what that area looks like. So we did our best to have a really good visioning session of what that could look like, get some pictures that are relevant to that, and what some other communities have done with those kinds of areas, keeping that ag industrial feel and what that looks like in a neighborhood setting with some commercial. And then interacting the trail. You've got a trail that's here and that's going to be connected to Des Moines very soon. So, great asset to the community, how to interact that area with that trail system as well. So as I said, we did do a needs assessment of the city facilities, and part of that was the park as well. So Public Works and some of parks equipment goes there as well. And what they found is that there's 86,200 square feet that you're short. That's for what you're short today, plus what they assume you're going to need in the future as you expand as a community and as a public works department. Long story short, is that where public works should be in the future, knowing that it's kind of outgrown that space, maybe that's not the area for that, and to be looking in the future as a community of, if public works isn't here now, and going into the future, where's that going to go, and start having that conversation. And that opens up that area for development then. As we know, the county's leaving, the city leaving, those are kind of, some bigger chunks of that property. And as that happens, the overall vision is to have a less intense use. So going from light industrial to potentially commercial neighborhood nodes, those kinds of things to, like I said, make something that's a good blend between the commercial that's existing there with Hy-Vee, and you've got some really well-established commercial that's on the road, with the neighborhood that's really well established as well. So, how does that space interact between those two uses that are existing? So, like I said, we had an action plan, and we broke that down into land use and redevelopment, road streetscape improvements and beautification, garden greenscape and vegetation, and then the Somerset Trail itself. We had a couple of action items just specifically for that. And then we tried to make that broken down into priorities. So some lower priorities, and it's not that they're not important, it's just that some of those lower priorities are not things that can happen next year. They're things that have to go a little bit farther out because they cost money or development has to happen or those kinds of things. So short and sweet. Yeah, we'll keep it real short for you guys, but I just wanted to introduce the plan and kind of where we landed with things. And then if you do have any comments, this is still a draft. So, if there's any comments that you guys have or any changes that you want us to make, hopefully you got a little bit of a chance to look through. We did send a copy out earlier to really fine-tooth comb it. But, if there's anything also that you have questions about after this that come up that you think of, let us know. My contact information there. So. Any thoughts, concerns, comments? Board?
Steps?
Yeah, so next steps will be going to council to be adopted, and then it'll become part of the comp plan. And then those action steps are really what would happen next. Start having the conversation, continue the conversation with the co-op, and find out what their long-term goals are. We had a conversation with them and they had alternate plans potentially, or spaces that they could go. So, you know, continuing that conversation of what that's gonna be as that evolves. Start figuring out what Public Works and Parks needs to do with their spaces in the future. The county, continue talking with them, and as they vacate that area, you know, what does that become and what does that look like? So, brownfield studies would be kind of the next thing too. There's some maybe remediation and things like that that would need to happen. I know AP's already looked into that, and we did have some of that as part of the appendix for this report, or we will. And you know, there's some funding that comes along with that too, potentially. So there's potentially brownfield funding and things out there too. So
I think one of the biggest things I would add to that too, I mean, when we talk next steps gonna probably be a lot of funding, and I think he mentioned that. I mean, in our conversation with the co-op, sure, they seemed open to possibly relocating, but they don't wanna pay for it. Hopefully so, they've got, I think what they say, something near $20 million worth of assets sitting on that property, so you know, that's something that we'll have to work through. And then the same thing, I mean, if we are ultimately going to move our public works facility off that location, we've gotta buy ground, we've gotta, you know, get funding for a new building and all of that, so I think ultimately, just based off what we heard, the public open house and just our steering committee group was, you know, yeah, that facility doesn't make too much sense there anymore, so we should be looking for an alternative location, but yeah, a lot of it's gonna come down to funding, so.
find a place that you can grow as a Public Works Department and Parks Department, and even the outside storage that's out there and things like that, that's right next to an established neighborhood. Maybe not ideal uses, so, you know, looking at using that space and interacting in that space a little differently, especially since you've got the trail opening up to Des Moines. I mean, that's gonna be a big draw now coming into the community, so what do you want that kind of entryway into the community from people from outside as bikers to look like and feel, and how that interacts? So, you know, it's more, there's more to it than just kind of the surface stuff too. You know, it's creating an identity and creating a really neat space and a reason for people to come and enjoy Indianola and spend money in Indianola and time here. So I think all of that we put into account as well, and had a lot of discussion on throughout this process.
Again, and it gives us that document now moving forward. We know the county's probably gonna be out of there within a year, I think, at this point. I don't know exactly what their timeline is, but again, it gives us the document to now say, this is what we want this area to look like, so we can start having discussions with the county first and foremost, but then with other landowners in that area too, so. Definitely not encouraging, or we're not saying that we're gonna displace people or move them out of here. That's all, absolutely not what we're going to do, but as land becomes available and you know, maybe you have a developer out there that's able to put together a chunk of land to do something, then what our plan calls for, that would be the goal, so.
Yeah, and at the public engagement, that was really what we had to kind of vet right away, is people had a lot of misunderstandings or misnomers that we were displacing people or any, you know, and that's really not, it's, you know, private development, privately driven, and those conversations would happen down the road, and, you know, that would be between a private owner and potentially a private buyer, so. It was not the city coming in and doing anything like that. So I think we squashed that pretty well, and hopefully they kind of shared that with anybody that wasn't at that meeting. We haven't heard anything more from that, so that's a good thing to bring up, though. It did come up at the
This is Al Ferris. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I just have one small question. Why do you want to relocate the trail between Sixth and Girard?
Yeah, so that came from AP specifically. He didn't like how that crosses it doesn't come at a 90. You want the trail to cross at a 90 for most, in most instances. Right now it follows the way the rail went. Now we can't completely abandon the rail. The rail potentially could be built on again in the future because it's just kind of a like a land grant type of situation. So we haven't put development over top of where the trail exists, but rerouting the trail so that it comes across there at a 90 is really just a safety factor. So you'd reroute the trail, and then we wouldn't build on the bed of the trail that's existing. We'd probably just have it as a green space, so if it needed to be taken over again, it potentially could be.
I hope you talk to the trail users before that gets in the plan. I don't think that's very popular.
I mean, and Al, it's something we definitely would do if we were ever to relocate that as part of a plan, but Like Sean said, it's a safety factor at the angle it comes in, and then I think even too, just to add to that, being offset from that intersection with six too was also a little bit of a concern because you've got a intersection, then right after that, you've got a trail, so there's just a few safety factors that are playing into that, but yeah, absolutely, that's something that we would definitely talk to people about before we did anything.
Moving forward, the adoption is to carry both plans forward. As things progress, they may morph into a different combination or,
Yeah.
they're both out there for options, right?
Yeah, and it really essentially, well, you're talking the two plans that are within this one, yeah, 100%, yes.
Two concepts that are there, yep.
I guess if you're looking for comments, I think it's great that we're taking a quirky area of the city that doesn't make sense necessarily for the future and giving some intention of direction with it, helping create a vision of what it could be, and really looking at what's been successful in other communities and applying that here. I think it's really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the intent, is to start the conversations, right? If you get some potential interest or somebody hears about it and gets interested with it, you've got then this document, like Charlie said, and that's really adopted as part of your comprehensive plan to say, here's what we'd like for this area. Do you have an idea? Come to the table and we can discuss it. And it might not be that exact thing, like you said, Bob, but it'd be maybe something that's gonna just improve that area, and, interacting with the trail and all the things that are thought of in that plan are just all good pieces that you can take from, and what that becomes in the future might not be that exact thing, but it'll definitely.
What action do we need to take from here, Charlie?
Just a recommendation on these, so this will serve as an amendment to Elevate Indianola, the comprehensive plan that we adopted in 2020. It'll essentially just be probably an appendix to it with a reference to it on our actually future land use map. This guy right behind me here, so yeah, just a recommendation on the comprehensive plan amendment to council would be appropriate from the commission.
I would love to make a motion to recommend this plan as presented to council for adoption.
Second. Do we need to do a roll call vote for this then?
Yes.
Richie? Yes. Ferris?
Yes.
Stecker?
Yes.
Mormon? Yes. Ray?
Yes.
Ormsby?
Yes?
And Soldwich?
Yes. All right, thank you.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Item 7B is consider recommendation on a major site plan application for storage units at 1818 North 7th Street.
So Bradley Cooper of application to allow for a approximately 13,000 square foot storage unit building at 1818 North 7th Street. A total of a little over 33,000 square feet of impervious surface area is proposed in total for the site. One off-street parking spot is required for every 20 units of storage space, with an addition of one per every employee on the maximum working shift. A total of 3 parking spaces are shown, including one ADA accessible space. 15% of open space is required for the site. The applicant is showing 3 shade trees, 6 ornamental trees, and 6 shrubs on the site. The site requires 1 shade tree, 2 ornamental, and 2 shrubs for every 2,000 square feet of required open space, meeting the landscaping requirement. The applicant has submitted elevations which shows the primary street facing facade containing stone veneer and cement board siding. These elevations do show the stone veneer returning at the corners of the building. And in addition, the applicant has also submitted, in conjunction with this agenda item, 7C, which is a plat of survey request to create the parcel in which this building would be located on. That required public mailings to be sent out, so no public comments have been received for either of those. At this time, staff is recommending approval.
Anyone on the commission have any questions or comments? Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to speak in regards to this agenda item?
Make a motion. Can I go back? Okay, I'll make a motion to for option 1 for consideration of recommendation of a major site plan for a storage unit at 1818 North 7th Street.
I'll second.
All right, could we do a roll call vote?
Harris,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Mormon. Yes. Ray,
Yes.
Ormsby,
Yes.
Solowich,
Yes.
and Richie. Yes.
All right. Item C is consider recommendation on request for approval of a plat of survey for Bradley Cooper on behalf of Powdered Metal Products LLC for a property addressed as 1816 North 7th Street.
So this application is tied to the last agenda item, so it just divides the existing property at 1816 North 7th Street to create parcel F, which would be the location of that storage, which would be the location of that storage unit site. Staff is recommending.
Any questions or comments? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments in regards to this agenda item? Would someone like to make a motion?
Here, I'll make a motion to approve the plat of survey here. What is it? Now I'm on the wrong screen here. Sarah. Of the plat of survey for Bradley Cooper on behalf of Powdered Metal Products LLC using option 1.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ormsby,
Yes.
Solowich,
Yes.
Richie. Yes. Harris,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Mormon,
Yes.
and Ray.
Yes.
All right. Next is item D, consider recommendation on request for approval of a plat of survey for Patrick Shepard on behalf of Downing Family Investments, Inc. for a property identified as parcel 490/2413-0663.
So Patrick Shepard of Civil Engineering Consultants is requesting a plat of survey to parcel off an unaddressed property. The property is part of the Heritage Hills 12 subdivision. These two areas of land are considered part of the same parcel. However, they're not contiguous as they were divided by the golf course. The plat of survey would create parcel F, which consists of the area to the south. At the moment, there's no proposed use for this property. Mailings were sent out to property owners within 200 feet of the subject property. No comments were submitted at this time, so staff is recommending approval.
I have a question. This is Al. You said property F? I thought that was G. Parcel G.
Misspoke, it should be G.
I'm sorry, I missed that answer. Is it parcel F or G?
It should be parcel G.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions? Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions in regards to this agenda item? Would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the plat of survey for Patrick Shepherd on behalf of Downing Family Investments. Option 1 is submitted.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mormon,
Yes.
Rib,
Yes.
Ormsby,
Yes.
Misty,
Yes.
Rucci. Yes. Ferris,
Sorry.
Yes.
Decker.
Yes.
All right. Item E, consider recommendation on request for approval of a plat of survey for Chad Daniels on behalf of Burley Bishop for a property located within 2 miles of the city of Indianola.
So the property owner and applicant for this plat of survey has indicated that they're withdrawing this application as the properties in question were bought, both of the two that would be split. So at this time, no action is required by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do we need to do anything formal with that?
Does that apply to item F as well? Okay.
Nope, just that one.
Item F, consider recommendation on request of a plat of survey for Chad Daniels on behalf of Burley Bishop for a property located within 2 miles of the city of Indianola.
So Chad Daniels has submitted a plat of survey request to divide property that is outside of Indianola's corporate limits, but within the 2 mile jurisdictional boundary. This property is located within Indianola's annexation priority area and is considered as high priority. The plat of survey would create parcel G and would split off the single-family dwelling from the agricultural portions of the property. The proposed parcel is shown as 3.49 acres. The parcel is proposed as this size in order to allow for the septic tank and the water well that is currently servicing the property to remain on that same parcel. Staff is approval.
And if I can, really quick, I just want to add on this one, because this one, we've done a lot of plat of surveys outside of the corporate limits. This is the first one I think we've done in one of our growth priority areas. So Emily and I actually kind of put this one under the microscope and just kind of made sure that we were going through the steps that we wanted to in our growth priority area. Ultimately, when you look at it, 3.49 acre lots inside a city at some point in the future is not ideal. It's a very large lot. However, you've really got to balance, you know, an existing agricultural lot that has a well and a septic system on it and the locations of those with the future needs of the city. And I think that's what we ultimately did in this one. We've got density goals obviously out in this area. And I think as we kind of sat down and talked it through, we're comfortable moving forward if there is a, 3.5 acre parcel out here that hopefully in the future when we're out here, the rest of that property can develop in a way where we can maybe get that average density to kind of come a little bit closer to what we want. So just wanted to point that out again. It's one of those examples where we're just really struggling to balance kind of existing conditions with future intentions of the city, and just wanted to make sure that that was known.
Any comments or questions? Anyone in the audience that has any comments or questions in regards to this agenda item? Not, would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the plat of survey for Burley Bishop as submitted using option 1 here.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes.
Ormsby,
Yes.
Soldwich,
Yes.
Rucci. Yes. Ferris,
Yes.
Decker,
Yes.
Mormon.
All right. Item G is consider waiving right to review of a plat of survey for Matt Thomas on behalf of Joseph Grubel for a property located within 2 miles of the city of Indianola.
So Matt Thomas is requesting a plat of survey approval for a property owned by Joseph Grubel. The lots are located outside of the city's limits, but within that 2-mile jurisdictional review boundary. The subject area is located outside of Indianola's identified priority annexation areas. So at this time, staff is recommending waiving the right to review per Iowa Code 354.
Jump in one more time on this one, because this is also a different path that we've taken forward, from our normal course of action on these. We actually, Emily brought this up as we were talking through these, and, you know, ultimately there is a book of regulations that we should be applying on these if we are approving them, and in the areas that we don't plan on growing into, I think we felt it was appropriate just to do outright waivers of review. As we've talked with the commission in the past, I think ultimately that is the goal with our new subdivision regulations, is that we would have something in place where we could maybe automatically waive the review on those areas outside of our jurisdiction. So maybe just kind of one step forward to getting to that point, but that, and then with talking with legal staff, we just felt that it was appropriate in these areas that we don't intend to grow into, that we just do an outright waiver review. That is the same for the next two after this one, so I won't jump in on those.
No. Any comments or questions from the commission members?
Our approval is to approve waiving review.
Yes, essentially, yeah. You could, if I were to give a recommendation to you, maybe just say the recommendation is to waive review. So the request wasn't for an approval of a waiver, yeah, so. It's all the same. It's just to the same spot.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions in regards to this agenda item? Would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we waive our right to review agenda item G. That's sufficient, Charlie?
Second.
And then we do a roll call vote on this as well?
Ormsby,
Yes.
Goldwich,
Yes.
Ritchie, Harris,
Yes.
Becker, Becker,
Yes.
Mormon, and Rabe.
Yes.
All right. So in related news, item H, consider waiving right to review of a plat of survey for Matt Thomas on behalf of Joseph Grubel for a property located within 2 miles of the city of Indianola.
So, Thomas is requesting a plat of survey for the same property, just a different split. The lots are located out of city limits, and also outside of the priority annexation areas. Staff is recommending waiving the right to review per Iowa Code 354.
Any comments or questions from the commission members? I'm assuming no one from the audience, if they didn't on the last one. Would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion to recommend to waive the right to review for agenda item H.
Second. You can have it.
Lynn can have it.
I like
Okay.
that.
We'll do a roll call vote.
Stecker,
Yes.
Mormon,
Yes.
Rabe,
Yes.
Ormsby,
Yes.
Goldwich,
Yes.
Ritchie, yes, and Harris.
Yes.
Item I, consider waiving right to review of a plat of survey for Chad Daniels on behalf of Vance Overton for a property located within 2 miles of the city of Indianola.
So, this plat of survey request is, again, outside of Indianola's corporate limits, but within that 2-mile jurisdictional review. It's actually right on that boundary of that 2-mile radius. The subject area is also outside of, the identified priority annexation areas, and staff is recommending waiving the right to review per Iowa Code 354.
Comments or questions from the commission members? Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions in regards to this agenda item? If not, could we motion?
Make a motion to waive the right to review plat of survey for item 7I.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Fullwich,
Yes.
Ritchie. Yes. Ferris,
Yes.
Stecker,
Yes.
Norman. Yes. Raves,
Yes.
and Ormsby.
Yes.
The next item on the agenda, I am recusing myself from, so I am going to turn it over to Sarah Ritchie.
Okay, item 7J is to consider the request from Steve Darr, minor modification to the Deer Run planned unit development.
So Steve Darr is requesting a planned unit development modification to lots 1 through 3 within the Deer Run Plat 6 development to allow for duplex and townhome uses, as outlined in R2 single-family residential attached zoning district. Currently, the recorded final plat for this subdivision indicates that the lots are to be used for single-family dwellings. The comprehensive plan guides this area for low to medium density residential, calling for a density of up to 15 dwelling units per gross acres, and uses including single-family detached and attached, multifamily, and apartments. The proposed modification would be consistent with the future land use map in terms of density and uses. Several public comments were submitted in regards to the request. The first public comment received is provided in the staff report, and is also an agenda attachment as well, and was submitted by Larry Perry, the former homeowner association president, and a resident at 814 South Y Street. The second public comment was submitted by Ray and Joanne Walton, residents of 712 South Y Street. That came in today, so it didn't make it into the staff report or as an agenda attachment, but I'll read that out for public comment. So it reads, Joanne and I regret that we cannot attend this meeting tonight. We live at 712 South Y, the address immediately adjacent to the southernmost lot being considered for multifamily. There are about 26 multifamily living units on the east side of Y Street between the highway and 10th Street. There are 4 single-family homes in that same area. Clearly, the street is a multifamily area. As the adjacent neighbors, we have no objection and in fact would welcome duplexes being built on the lots, assuming they are in character with the neighborhood in terms of size, quality, etc. Please do not hesitate to contact us with any questions. Thank you for doing the tough work of looking at zoning changes, Ray and Joanne Walton. And then the third and final public comment received was over the phone from property owner Roger Lewis, resident at 900 South Y Street. Roger had inquired about the modification in relation to the recorded letter that was submitted by Perry in the phone call. Lewis had indicated that they had door knocked on a majority of the dwellings located in the townhome development, and was surprised that there were some homeowners that were in support of the modification. And I believe he might be in the audience too, so, but that was in terms, that comment was essentially what the phone call was about, the inquiring and the door knocking. So staff at this time is recommending approval of the planned unit development modification as the comprehensive plan and the zoning regulations support it for this area. Planning and Zoning Commission may look at alternatives, or they may place conditions for approval, including requiring duplex and townhomes to be the same look and feel as the adjoining townhome development to the south.
Questions from commission?
Yeah, I believe I had the conversation with you this afternoon. I'm Roger Lewis, and I'm the HOA president there of the Deer Run HOA. And,
Excuse us real quick, sir.
I'm sorry?
Could we ask you to stand at the podium for us, just for, so everyone can hear?
yeah.
And can you restate your name and your address for us?
Yeah, it's Roger Lewis, and we're at 900 South Y. Our HOA adjoins these 3 lots to the south. And my conversation was with you was that we were not aware that the city of Indianola doesn't review or much less enforce covenants and private agreements. My understanding, some cities do. But we just, I say we, I'm speaking just as one of the 16 homeowners. But I want the commission to be aware, and I don't know if you mentioned it or not, I couldn't hear you very well, but there is a written recorded agreement between the owners and Deer Run HOA that I think, I don't know if this went out to the public or not, the copy of this agreement, did it?
I got it.
And we want them to be aware that this is still in effect. We can't just simply discard this agreement. So I think you rightfully said that this disagreement is probably between the owners of DFM, the developer, and Deer Run HOA. You know, am I saying that correctly? So it's more of an awareness thing that this needs to be addressed. I don't know if the DFM has a representative here tonight or not. Evidently not. But it's a recorded, written, valid contract that says these 3 lots will be single-family dwellings. And of course, we would accept the decision of the commission if they want to make it R2, if that fits the usage plan. But mainly, we want everyone to be aware that before anything could proceed building-wise, this needs to be dealt with. Okay. Okay.
Is there any other public comment?
I might make one.
Please. State your name and address for us.
My name's Joe Brummel. I live at 800 South Y. I got the notice. My only question for you to consider is Steve Dar made an agreement with us. Now he's wanting to change his mind and do something else. Which side are you going to be with? Steve Dar that made an original agreement or the Steve Dar of today? Thank you.
Mind if I ask Charlie a question real quick? Hey, Charlie, how does this play out for us, right? There is a private agreement in place, right? I'm looking at it here. It was recorded. We're being asked to look at a PUD amendment. How does this agreement affect what we're here to look at exactly?
It really doesn't. We've ran this past legal just to assure that my initial thoughts on it were correct, but really what it is, and really with any covenants, if you're looking at, homeowners association that have covenants on grounds, we, the city, don't enforce those. We don't act on them. We don't have any say on what gets put on those normally. So it is typically considered a private agreement between the landowners and the developer, whoever that may be at that point in time. So it really doesn't have too much of a bearing or effect on what decision I believe that we should be making here at all. Our decisions need to be based off what the comprehensive plan says, how it fits the zoning, how it fits the neighborhood and all of that stuff.
So we're looking at it from the perspective of there's bare undeveloped land here in a row of development and an owner in a vacuum. And I know that it's hard to say it in a vacuum, but in a vacuum has come to us with a request to amend the PUD. Our perspective is zoning. It's, does that PUD match the future land use? Does it match our comp plan? Does it match our regulations? Is it a viable product that's not going to bring detriment or harm or incongruity with the surrounding uses, correct?
Correct. And I'll be fully honest, you know, the letter that's here, the covenants that may be in place on there, we haven't even done an analysis on that to see, and my assumption is they're all still in effect and valid, but what they say exactly, we haven't gotten a legal interpretation on what this decision may mean or anything like that. Again, our point with legal when we discussed it with them was take a look at what your comprehensive plan says, take a look at the effects on the surrounding land uses, and try not to look at these private agreements that are in place.
That goes back to my question, is we have to view it from a very specific viewpoint. But if private entities that entered into private agreements with private developers, that does not exclude them from any other remedies outside of our realm.
Yeah.
Have to look at it in our narrow bounds, correct?
And exactly, and I think the other thing to point out here too is that, you know, the letter stating that they should be single-family homes, we are not changing the PUD to say no longer are single-family homes allowed. They can still build single-family homes, and that's just now gives the developer another option to put something else there, so.
I wanted clarity for all of us to make sure that we have very defined rules that we have to review stuff within. And so, to be clear, we have our set, but private agreements and private pursuits against developers, that is a whole other thing that we have nothing to say about.
Am I able to make a comment as someone who, okay, do I need to step
If you
up
walk
to the
around.
stand? Do I need to step up and go to the podium?
You probably should,
Okay, I will, thank you. I've never done this before.
Time for everything.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Misty Soldwish, and my address is 604 South Y Street. So I live nearby these properties as well, but also I am representing DFM Development in the sale of the properties. And I think my understanding of the background of this is these lots were originally zoned to allow townhomes. And when they saw market changes in the past, they decided to change them to single-family homes. They approached the city and went through that process. My understanding, and I was not part of the conversation with that HOA at that time, had nothing to do with it, but that there were concerns about what kind of single-family homes would be built there. And so the agreement to agree was that while they didn't have covenants for those lots, they would agree that whatever covenants or whatever, that the building requirements would match Deer 1 Plat 2. So when I had a conversation with the owner of the lots, they said their understanding wasn't that they were restricting single-family homes or townhomes from being built there from the future. They had an agreement that if single-family homes were to be built, it wouldn't potentially devalue the homes that were built, the townhomes that were existing. So that's what he explained to me. When I read the letter, I can see an interpretation can go either direction, but when he explained to me, it wasn't saying we are agreeing that townhomes would never be built there. He stated to me, his understanding was, we are agreeing that if a single-family home was to be built there, it would match Deer Run Plat 2's covenants. So I don't think it was an intent to renege on an agreement. It was based out of the initial concern for maintaining similar type properties in the area. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yeah. I'd have to disagree that there was some confusion on this, the single-family homes. It's very, very clear. That's all that we're to be doing. And I wish the president of the HO, that is, of course, in Arizona now, that entered in this agreement here in 2016. And the gentleman that signed for DFM, I guess, is no longer with the organization. So it's kind of difficult, but my conversations with the previous HOA president, there was no misunderstanding whatsoever. And I'm not trying to make it sound like, everyone is opposed to putting duplexes there instead of single-family homes. Indeed, I did a telephone survey of all the 16 owners, and it's probably just the opposite. But we just want to make sure that people are aware that there is a signed agreement, recorded agreement, legal contract that says these can't. And I very much appreciate what Charlie explained it really well. But just want to make sure there was no misunderstanding whatsoever. These were supposed to be single-family homes. I think probably outside the purview of this group here, I think the way to handle this is for the developer and the HOA to get together and come to some understanding on the architecture of the duplexes that are supposed to be in there as far as matching the homes that are there and quality and square footage, et cetera. So I wish that DFM had a representative here tonight, and that'd be my recommendation. Yes, somebody to get a hold of whoever is, I suppose, Steve Dar. And let's have a conversation. And I think this could be amicably the way that they want it to go. But the way it stands now, this can't be ignored. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from commission members?
Question I had, Charlie. This request is pretty definitive. So it's specifically wanting 2-unit townhomes, as outlined in R2. We have other options in R2, or is that? I'm just asking the question, is it really our job to be specifically agreeing to a certain way to do it as opposed to just approving the R2 zoning district?
Well, and it's not, because it's not a straight rezoning just because of the PUD that's out there, so that,
Gotcha. Okay.
But really quick, I can answer that. I'm just pulling up the use table here. So R2 was by right, single-family dwelling, detached, single-family dwelling, semi-detached, which is your traditional duplex, 2-family dwelling on one lot, and townhouse dwelling units as well, which can be 3+ units. So I think that's maybe what the R2, based off what that is saying, it would allow everything except those townhouse dwelling units where you have the 3+ units on there.
With that, to Bob's point, because again, I kind of want to make sure we're looking at it the right way. We're simply amending the PUD. The architectural requirements are already in place that would keep the development within that harmonious with the uses around, because it's just an amendment to the PUD that's already there, correct?
Yes. Yep.
So if we recommend the amendment to the PUD to allow for the higher density, all the architectural requirements, protections, everything else is in place already. We need to make more on top of that.
Yes and no. So the architectural standards that we have for single-family dwellings within our code give a lot of flexibility. to design on that, so, you know, it doesn't necessarily limit the type of materials you can use on a single family dwelling. As a matter of fact, I think it says you can have a variation between class 1 and 4 materials, so.
Current single-family dwellings out there that are harmonious in use.
Yes.
Match with, I mean, they weren't using class 4 materials on them.
No, yes, 100%, so, but.
The current PUD allows for our standard architectural stuff to take.
Yes. I think Emily had kind of mentioned that too, and maybe that is kind of a recommendation with a condition that could come forward, is maybe that there is some architectural, design added to the motion where it has to match the surrounding buildings, you know, I think to the north, I'm trying to remember exactly where this area is without looking at a map, but to the north. And then I think that residential neighborhood, on 10th down there as well too, so.
So like immediately, there's 2 residential units to the north and then more townhomes, and then a whole bunch of townhomes to the south before you get back to single-family home.
One final comment from.
Yeah, I was just gonna give you a little history. I was a party to that when the agreement was made. There were fourplexes there, and they still exist. It was originally built with fourplexes. They were having trouble selling the inside units. So that's when they came to us as an association and says, well, we'll build a duplex on the south end of your complex, and we'll build a duplex on the north side of your complex, which happened. Then they entered into the agreement, which they said they would build single-family dwellings of the kind and quality that's equivalent to 10th Avenue, 10th Street, I think it's 10th Avenue or 10th Street that goes south and east of us. Yeah. So, yes, the units, the lots were originally plotted for multiple family dwellings, as you said. But there was never an agreement that would be anything but single-family dwellings on the 3 lots north. However, we realize we're barking up a tree, and the decision's pretty well made, but our concern is that we have units that are of equivalent value, style, and architecture built on those lots that'll match the existing lots, units to the south, not try to match the ones to the north, which is separated by single-family dwellings to the north. And there's a draw, and then there's 3 lots. So the draw separates it from the others. But it just seems to be logical that it would, if we'd have some consideration for the architectural integrity of the property. And secondly, it seems to me that Steve Dar should have talked to us. He made an agreement with us. He should have been talking to us. And if he goes forward without talking to us, he's going to have a problem. So he needs to be aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion?
No one has anything else to say. I'll make a motion to approve the request to a minor modification to the Deer Run PUD as submitted.
Second? Is there a question? Do we have a second?
Okay, good.
I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please. Stecker?
Yes.
Byron?
Yes.
Ray?
Yes.
Ormsby? Yes. Ritchie? Yes. Harris? Al? He's muted. Al, you're on mute.
Thank you. I was trying to ask a question, but I guess I'll vote yes anyway.
Okay, recorded as a yes for Al Ferris.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Back over to you, Misty.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Item K, consider request from Warren County Historical Society for rezoning from the single-family residential detached R1 and single-family residential attached R2 zoning district to the highway commercial C2 zoning district for land located at 1206 1206 and 1300 West Second Avenue.
And I'm gonna take this one, I don't know if the commission is aware, but, the council has preliminarily, given their approval to get into a real estate contract with the Warren County Historical Society for ground that the city currently owns, that is just northwest of the intersection of South J Street and Highway 92. As part of this and as part of the proposed agreement that we have with Warren County Historical Society, they've asked for a rezoning to the property as part of the due diligence period on this to a use that would allow them to further grow onto the adjacent property. As we looked at that, the current property that the Historical Society was on is currently zoned R1, which does not allow for museums, as this would be classified, neither does the R2 district, so the C2 district would bring the current property into conformance with zoning, but then would also allow the Historical Society, once and if we do close on this property, to expand any of their use onto that property. So it gets a little bit confusing here, but initially, the first agreement that we had with them was to exclude the north 170 feet of the city's property from that agreement. They have since submitted a second purchase agreement to include that north 170 feet on there, but right now, as we stand, the rezoning is just for that south portion, which is excluding the north 170 feet. So we've got to have a conversation, I think, going forward on that, if we need to include all of that or not. But I think for now, just for reason of notification that was made to surrounding property owners already, we are excluding that north 170 feet on the city-owned property. So with that, happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Right. Even though the comp plan shows this public, semi-public, low density, it's not really what they wanna use it for.
Yeah, and the comp plan, what it did is it really put those designations on city-owned properties. So if it saw a city-owned property, it was putting that designation on there. And I know representatives from the Historical Society are here, from my understanding, I'm not sure that there's any concrete plans put in place right now. Really how this came about was we had an offer from an LLC that was out of state on this property, and the Historical Society countered because they found it advantageous to get this piece of ground since it was their only mechanism to grow in the future, and without it, they would have to relocate, so. But anyways, I say all that's why that was put on there, just because it was a city-owned piece, and I think at the time, previously, we were kind of looking at holding on to that property for a future alignment of J and K Street. As we've gotten into the K Street paving project a little bit further in depth, I think what we're seeing is that alignment, the cost benefit of that alignment probably is not there. The two intersections are offset, the street jog is big enough to where the DOT potentially shouldn't have any issues with that. I can't speak on their behalf. The other thing I think about aligning that intersection was there was a thought that there would be a stoplight there at some point to kind of break up the flow of Highway 92, but we have run stoplight warrant analysis on that through our Public Works Department, and the traffic just is not out there at this point in time to warrant a stoplight in this vicinity. And even if it were to be one in the future that were warranted, we're not 100% convinced that with the traffic that's coming off of J Street that it would even be the appropriate location for it. You look just a little bit to the west, and Kenwood's a much busier street. Kenwood's also shown in our future transportation plan as growing to the north as we continue to go, which would most likely lead it to having more traffic. So I'm not saying that we'd ever put one there, but that seems to be a logical location if there were to ever be one in the future. Long-winded answer, I know, but hopefully that helps.
I mean, I understand the need to change the zoning, I just more concerned about what its use may be in the future, or, you know, if historical society decides to sell it, who ends up with it, and what they can do to that corner.
That's my same question. I think I'm thinking the same way you are, Bob, is, I mean, great now, do that. But is there a way, this is already kind of an interesting area, is there a way to make this conditional on ownership and put a clause in there upon transferring?
We've never got into conditions on zoning, that I'm aware of. I know it's possible. I would tend to recommend against it because it becomes somewhat of a tracking nightmare 10 to 20 years from now. If we ever do it, but, at the same time, anything that's gonna go there that would be commercial, and let's just hypothetically say that it is sold to somebody, I mean, we've gotta go through a site planning process and make sure that all of that stuff is met, through that process, so.
There's no way to write something in that recommends that the intent of the future use follows the comp plan.
For museums only.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, give me 1 second here, because I think, to be quite honest, I think one of the things when you're reviewing a site plan that you should take into consideration is the comprehensive plan designation. So that might give. Just reading through them really quick here. Maybe not, maybe that is not in there, it does talk about the zoning district, so. Again, it's, you know, I guess I look at this as, from our perspective, again, even if that hypothetical situation were to happen, it is on a highway corridor. Site plan's gonna be put in place, you're gonna have to review a site plan if there was ever a commercial development plan there. I completely respect that we're looking at that though, because that is always something you need to look at. You could have somebody come forward who owns a piece of ground with a proposal, especially on a zoning change, and that can get thrown out the window a year later if that property gets sold. So completely, yeah, understand the concern, but at the same time, I think our site planning standards are in a place now to where if something was proposed there, we have the leverage to review that and make sure that it is appropriate for that site, that it is meeting all our zoning requirements, that we're looking at traffic safety and all of that stuff, so.
Is there another, this is Al, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Is there another way to come at this, rather than some kind of restriction or condition agreement on the zoning, can the city, when they sell the property to them, put that kind of condition on there?
Deed restriction.
Yeah, we could deed restrict it, I mean, that's, and, we'd probably wanna talk about that with the Historical Society and council at the same time, just to make sure everybody was on board with that, but it definitely is a possibility.
Anyone
know.
to speak? Could you give your name and address, please?
I am Deb Taylor. I'm representing the Warren County Historical Society at 1300 West Second. And I know that a lot of people are aware that we're there, but don't know a lot about us. We've been there 50 years. This is our 50th year coming up. So we are not here today, gone tomorrow group. Part of the reason that we needed this property was for parking. We have like 5 spaces total. Otherwise, we're borrowing and working with the fairground to use some of their property. So this gives us an opportunity to have a parking area for 911 access, for property maintenance and all of that type of thing. So it is going to be used for that. Right now, we do not have big plans for it. We want a green space is what we're looking for, because as a historical society, we put on a lot of programming and that type of thing where we need the green space. We need parking. So we're not making any big changes to anything at this point. But we do need it, and that is because we're planning for 50 years down the road from now. That's our purpose. Is there any questions I can answer for you? Anything that you really want to know that?
Thank you so much. Commission, any other comments or questions?
I do have one other. Charlie, is it appropriate to, if we were to approve rezoning, put some condition on there that it was only pending completion of the sale? Or something like that?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. We've got the schedule lined up pretty tight right now on council's final approval. To be quite honest, when council would have their final approval, if everything moves forward, I think publication would occur on February 14th and we're closing on February 15th. So the two timelines do match up pretty good. I think hopefully by that time we'll know, but I think that's something we can work through on that definitely is to be subject on closing. Even if it wasn't possible, the one caveat we would have is obviously if we didn't close, we could bring an application back forward as the city would still own the property to zone it back to what it was previously, so. Yeah, I think it's appropriate to make that condition. I'll have to take a little bit of time to kind of think through exactly how that plays out and how we build it into the ordinance.
That would change to alternative 2.
Yes. Just as I'm sitting here thinking more too about the deed restriction, I think my only hesitation to that would be, I'm not sure how you can get out of a deed restriction once it's placed on there. I don't know if that's even possible. It'd be something that I'd wanna look into, but you know, again, Warren County Historical Society's been here for 50 years. Hopefully they're here for another, 300-400 years, whatever it may be, long before or long after we're all gone. But, if they were to leave and you've now deed restricted that for a museum, let's say, I don't know how many other types of museums are gonna be knocking down the door to locate there. So that's just one thing to take into consideration on that.
I think the big thing is just for me is, and your point, you said it earlier, and I'm probably just not quite used to it yet, is that it's an interesting location, just let something come in, right? There's a lot of things that go in there with the fairground there, with the museum right next to it, with the residential, with the commercial, with the highway, the mismanaged streets. We just wanna make sure that we're not blindly doing it, but again, probably just not used to having new ordinances in place that protect us a little more on that. And so, that was my initial hesitation, is just wanna make sure we're thinking through, to your point, the next 50 years, 100 years, all that stuff. And I guess for me, if the city goes through with it and has to immediately rezone it back because they don't, then I'll just look a little silly, but first time.
Any other comments or questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
I was giving you a chance unless you're good. I wanna let the guys on the phone not have their opportunity to make motions.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you.
Then I'll make a motion to, get back to my right screen here, to approve the request from the Warren County Historical Society for the rezoning from R1 and R2 to C2 for the properties located at 1206 and 1300 West Second Avenue. Using, I don't know if there's any, I was not gonna make a motion with any conditions, just as laid out by staff.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ormsby?
Yes.
Fullwood?
Yes.
Ritchie? Harris?
Yes?
Stecker?
Yes.
Norman? Yes. And Ray?
Yes.
All right. Now Now to the important item on the agenda. Discussion regarding planning and zoning meeting schedule for 2023.
So we had a little bit of a guess this morning on how long this meeting would last, and I guessed an hour and 40 minutes, so I'm gonna do what I can to really stretch this one out. Anyways, as we discussed, at our last meeting, we discussed the option of going to 2 meetings per month, so the schedule that is submitted in front of you does include that. Thankfully, really, there wasn't too many holiday conflicts that we had with that. However, I would, take your attention to the last proposed meeting of the year, which does happen 2 days after Christmas. I think that was the only one we were a little concerned about. However, I think the deadlines and the packets to commission are a little bit before Christmas and the meeting's a little bit after Christmas. It just, if it's a meeting like tonight, you might have to be reviewing packets during Christmas. From my standpoint, I'm not too terribly concerned about that, but I just wanted to point that one out and make sure you were okay with it.
Stand way out. I'm gonna ask you.
Any questions? I would be happy to answer.
Thank you.
Make a motion to approve 2023 meeting agenda. And we have a second.
Second.
And this one can just be a voice vote, you don't have to do.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No.
Well,
Item M, consider amendment to P and Z rules and regulations regarding meeting dates and times.
This just coincides with the last one. There is one minor amendment to your rules and procedures on meetings where it now will state that you will meet bi-monthly on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month.
And treats will be included.
Not giving a butt.
amendment?
Be like Smarties or something.
Cups of water.
Cups of water.
Warm cups of water.
Do we need a motion?
Motion to approve the amendment stated?
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Item 8, comments, the building permit report.
I think I've been preaching this one for a while. If you've looked at it, we're down on new homes this year. Actually took a comparison of the rest of the metro as a percentage wise of what everybody else is down, and we're right in line. So compared to where everybody was last year, I should say. So no big shock there. The one thing I think we're pretty proud of, if proud is the word to use, I'm not sure, but our commercial valuation did skyrocket this year. And I think our total valuation added in, when it's all said and done, there's one permit that we still have outstanding right now that's about 6.5 million, I think. So that's one I know that's gonna boost the valuation, and we intend, or we hope that that's going to be approved by the end of the year, so.
Now he'll be off to a good start for 2023, right? I might just roll it over the next year to make the next year look better.
Yeah.
The thing for our, it's all fiscal year, so it's July to June.
Oh, that's right.
So it really doesn't matter, but for these numbers, it's calendar year.
Just adjourn the meeting then.
Any final comments or items to discuss? Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.